Anita, thank you all for staying through weather to hear this panel. I had the opportunity to serve in the state senate and serve with each one of these individuals here, and I can tell you all the colleagues I serve with are great folks, very public-minded, but these five individuals are five of the hardest working members of the General Assembly, and I would say that whether they were here with us today or not. They just are. Let me take just a minute and tell you a little bit about each one of them. To my immediate right is Representative Rick Glazier. Rick's from Cumberland County. He's an attorney. He has been a school board member, chair of the school board in Cumberland County, and he also is a teacher. He teaches at Fayetteville State, and he teaches at Campbell Law School. Has a great deal of involvement with education. He and I served together, co-chairing Education Subcommittee on Appropriations during my early time in the Senate, and he's a great colleague. Next to him is what we call a big chair. These are the full appropriation chairs that make the big decisions about the budget. That's Representative Bryan Holloway. Now, he was a teacher. He was a history teacher. His wife is an assistant principal. He comes from an education family. He cares a lot about education in our state. In addition to being a full appropriation chair of the General Assembly, he also chairs what's known as the Education Oversight Committee, which meets during the interim. So he has a great deal of involvement in educational matters and is a very excellent representative. Next to him, a newer member in his second term, and by the way, Representative Glazier is in his sixth term, Representative Holloway is in his fifth term, and just in his second term is Representative Craig Horn. I can't tell you a long list of background in education. He comes out of the private sector and retired and came to North Carolina for grandchildren reasons and got involved in politics and got elected. But I got to tell you, since he's been in the General Assembly, he has spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours learning about education. He's in a school or more every week in his district or somewhere else in North Carolina. He's been to every conference you can imagine to learn about schools and education. He has done his homework, as educators would like to see. Next to him, Senator, I used to know her as representative when I served there, but now Senator Angela Bryant. I should have said counties too. Stokes and Rockingham for Representative Holloway and Union County for Representative Horn. Senator Bryant has several counties that she represents: Halifax, Nash, Vance, Warren, Wilson. I think I got all those right. She's been involved in education in many, many ways. She comes from an education family. Most of the members of her family were teachers or educators. She served on the Board of Trustees at UNC Chapel Hill. We served there together a number of years ago before she went on to be on the Board of Governors, before going into the General Assembly, first in the House, now in the Senate. And she still serves on the Education Committee. And last but certainly not least, Senator Jerry Tillman, an educator if there ever was one. Jerry was a teacher, a coach, a principal, a superintendent. We still called him Coach when I was serving there. He served for many years on the community college board in his county of Randolph, and a real education guy. He's also the whip of the Senate. If you don't know about the legislative process, the whip is the vote getter. He's a pretty big guy, so when this big guy comes over and puts that big arm around you and says, "We really need your vote on this one, Richard," you listen to Jerry Tillman. Great person. All here are great representatives and senators, and we thank them for taking some time to be here with you today. Now, we had some questions that we had told them we might be asking them, but yesterday there was a fairly major announcement made by the governor and the leadership of the General Assembly. And so I know that's of interest to you, so I thought we might take a few minutes and get some reactions from some of the members here about how they see that proposal going, and perhaps others. We've heard some great ideas this last 2 days, terrific ideas, great concepts, great experiences. And we should put up a sign right in front of these five individuals, but the buck stops here. These five individuals and their colleagues, the 120 members of the General Assembly, ultimately have the responsibility to make the policy decisions and the financial decisions for education in North Carolina. And those are not easy at all. I can tell you from experience, there are lots of competing interests and lots of issues with Medicaid that's been controlling our budget for the last several years, a deep recession we're just now getting out of. So there's some terrific challenges in the budget in general, but education remains the number one spending priority for North Carolina, as it has been for some time. So panelists, let's just start with the issue. What do you all think of the proposal that came out yesterday? And more importantly, what do you think its chances are in the General Assembly?
Well, I'll take a first shot at it, Senator. My view on compensation has been tied into actually principles that were in the House and Senate budget in a committee study proposal that Representative Holloway actually helped put together. And that is that any compensation plan that the state has to meet 3 criteria. It has to be fair, or as Daniel Pink said yesterday, sort of past the norm of fairness. Second, sustainable, and third, comprehensive. My concern is that yesterday's proposal raises more questions on all 3 points perhaps than it might answer. And so just a couple of thoughts on that to open. We are, as the governor correctly pointed out, I think, depending on sort of the data you look at, somewhere between 46 and 49 in teacher pay. And so I think it's not a surprise to anyone that there's an enormous issue. And it's probably also not a surprise to anyone in this room that Pink's proposition yesterday that we have to pay people enough to take the issue off the table and let them do the work, and that we're not doing that in North Carolina, haven't done that for some time in North Carolina. My concern on the fairness is to front load the plan if that is a true first step with a sustained commitment to many other steps is one thing. When it is sort of the sum and substance of the entire proposal yesterday with a trust me, we'll get to the rest later proposal, that given the credibility that we all have had in the last 5 years and perhaps not living up to our full obligations there, I think begs the question. All of which I think is predicated on whether there's available revenue, which is the 800-pound gorilla that no one wants to tackle, but has to be if we're really going to answer it. So it's a proposal that deals with 24,000 teachers, but what about the other 75,000? And I think my concern is that to come out with that proposal without a sustained how we're going to fund it, what we're going to do, when the next steps are going to occur, creates more division in a state right now very divided. Secondly, the sustainability question really has to answer the revenue question. It is simply not reasonable or credible to believe under the current revenue scheme for the next several years that we can do this plus do a significant enough raise for everybody else that moves us really in a sustainable way over the next 4 years to the national average, which we need to. And finally, where's the comprehensiveness that the State Board of Education suggests we need? And that is that pay is a whole lot more than even just the base pay. It's how do we deal with mentor pay and professional development and consolidation of steps and differentiated pay for shortage areas. And I think the problem of trying to do that has to be that we have to deal with it together. So those would be at least some thoughts I think we all have to answer based on what happened yesterday.
I know Senator Tillman is anxious to respond.
Thank you, Senator. Once a senator, always a senator. Once a senator, you do have a second opportunity, as long as you're living. I think we need to go back and review a little bit of past history. For the last 5 years, except for 2 years ago, teachers received nothing. We gave a 1.8% raise 2 years ago. Not nearly enough. This year, on your 2014 return, you will exclude the first $15,000 of income. That will equate to more than a 1.2% raise for most of you if you're married filing jointly. This time, with only $200 million available, and that's a pretty big, Governor Hunt, that's a pretty big amount to put into a step one. And Representative Glazier, we said and have said there are going to be several steps, and you're going to hear some other announcements very soon. We're planning on doing this huge raise for beginning teachers. I'm talking about the first 7 or 8 years. We're losing our best and brightest. We're spending millions of dollars in our higher education system to educate these great students who are going to Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, this right off the get-go will put us on par with all of them except Virginia, and we'll get very close to them. The teachers that we've talked to said if you've got limited amount of money, do what you can to keep the best and the brightest. That's only step one. Believe you me, there will be other incentives in there, and they are now. In this current legislation, you have opportunities to get additional compensation by being one of the best teachers in your school and being selected for that. There are $500 bonuses over 5 years that will equate to $5,000 on top of each other. So that is additional money for teachers that are performing well. You are also going to see some money in there for master teachers, not master degree teachers, but master teachers. I think we're trying to put $10 million in there for that. And this bill will pass, and it will pass and be effective July 1st. There are many steps in this plan, and we want to, believe me, I've worked 40 years with teachers. You can't pay good teachers enough. Everybody will not get the same raises probably from here on out. There will be a lot in there for excellence and achievement and moving your students ahead. Are your students making adequate progress under your tutelage? If they are, we need to pay you a lot of money. But you're going to see some things that's going to come out in the next few weeks. There is a plan. We've not had the money, but the tax plan that we've put in and some of these other economic steps are going to pay dividends that we will be reaping, hopefully when this economy picks up, and I believe we've jump-started it. I think you'll see a lot of good things for great and wonderful teachers.
Senator Bryant.
I just wanted to add that I think the devil is going to be in the details in terms of, you know, how fair this plan is and who it covers. And right now, I guess I'm sort of unclear on the details, and the press coverage has not really been thorough enough to help us understand the details. I'm told that teachers with in steps 0 to 7, from newly hired to 7, will be moved to $33,000 in 14-15, and then those in step 0 to 9 will be moved to $35,000 in year 15-16. I don't really know how that applies to teachers who have the master's stipend and the national certification stipends, how they fit in there. And is it possible that a teacher at year 8 and 9 would somehow be making less than somebody in the earlier bumps? It's just unclear to me how it's going to work out. And then when I hear there are plans for other kind of master teacher plans and other plans, my concern is how will these apply in terms of fairness? Will it take into account the environments teachers are and the populations teachers are teaching in and their opportunities to attain these, to get these performance payments? So I think these are the details that we all have to be looking out for. I think if there's ever a time that teachers have to all become active as advocates for yourselves and your districts and your communities, talking not only to your legislators, but your communities and your boards and businesses and all the education advocates, so that we can develop a system that will be supportive of you professionally. Because what the research shows is that the most effective of these systems are those that teachers themselves support. And that would be one of the most important things.
Let's turn to Representative Holloway.
Yes, thank you. Without question, starting teacher salaries need to be increased. I think certainly we need to look at trying to retain the best and brightest, but I also think that the General Assembly does need to be very careful. We do have to look at things like revenue, how much money do we have or don't have. And I think it's also very important to treat our teachers equitably across the board. And I think that we've got to look at just getting the generalized pay and the salary increased overall. We don't know what revenue is going to do exactly, and we, of course, hope for the best. To me, I think we would serve ourselves very well if we would look at restoring the teacher pay steps. I think that would be a huge plus for our teachers. Of course, we can talk long-term compensation. I think we also have to be honest. If we're going to change the way we completely compensate our teachers, we need to be methodical about it and make sure we take the time to do it appropriately. But I'm hopeful that, of course, we'll have revenue, and I'm hopeful that we can do equitable raises for teachers. I'm a little nervous about how things are moving right now, but we'll just keep hoping for the best. But I think that we cannot leave teachers behind that have served up 10 years of their life and career in the profession because they are just as important as the folks who are just starting out, in my opinion, as well.
Representative Horn.
Thank you, Senator. I'm the learner here, and maybe I don't relate as well or or certainly not in the same way the rest of you do. What I heard yesterday was that this is a start. And I think that's important. And I think that the governor reiterated that more than once throughout his speech. This is a beginning. I'm going to take him at his word at this point. I think that's fair. I heard about across the state, and as you mentioned, I've been in hundreds of schools and talked to thousands of teachers, parents, superintendents, and administrators. And that starting pay, that floor, was the #1 issue every single time, everywhere I went. That had to be addressed. It scares me to death any time, as an appropriations guy, I agree with you. The devil's in the details. Okay, where's the money going to come from? I'm not about to support a plan that further puts our kids and grandkids in debt, when right now half of the money we pay in taxes is going to pay the debt. Where's all this going to lead? That scares the trash out of me. But I heard some other things that were particularly important to me yesterday. I heard about a career pathway for classroom teachers. I believe very strongly in that concept, that we have to have a career pathway for classroom teachers. Teachers I've come across love to teach. They're all in. They want to teach. They love that environment. We need to allow them to prosper both financially and educationally in that environment, and find a way to create a career pathway and not force them into other ways in order to make more money. I heard talk of technology. Pretty much everyone here knows how much I believe that we need to embark on a fundamental change in how we deliver education, and that can be accomplished through the use of technology. Not technology alone, but through the use of technology, appropriate use. So I'm encouraged, but I am cautious. I would rather adhere to the Winston Churchill quote that I heard about on day one. Some people see a difficulty in every opportunity. I see an opportunity in every difficulty.
Thanks to each of you. Obviously, this is a topic that's going to be given considerable amount of discussion in the upcoming session, and these 5 individuals are going to be key players in what happens next. And we certainly heard a lot about compensation throughout this forum. We also heard a lot about the status of teachers, and I'd like to turn us a little bit towards that topic and just sort of get from several of you, not necessarily everybody, but unless you want to, just sort of what you view as the role of either, not just the state government, but also the local districts, the schools themselves, the principals, the administrators, even the teachers, in terms of enhancing the status of teachers, and what kind of strategies might there be to do just that? Senator?
I'll be brief on this one. Local school districts have a big role, and they're going to have an even bigger role in helping to increase teacher pay, in especially areas of those hard-to-find teachers, and it's hard to locate teachers in certain areas of your city or county. You're going to see some exciting news, and I believe it's going to come out in the very near future about a way to maximize that and let locals tap into, maybe on a matching basis, some monies that we hope to make available. That it may not be a one-to-one match, but locals do not participate to the degree. North Carolina is #8 in the nation in the state funding dollars committed to education. That means that we're doing everything we can with the money we have. At least we're doing a lot with it. We're #8 in the nation. Our locals have a big role to play and want to play that role. They just need a vehicle that can multiply their money, and I think we're going to have some exciting news, hopefully before long, about how that can take place.
Senator Bryan.
I just wanted to mention that that's an important in the districts I represent. When you talk about, and when we talk about local districts, I want to clarify, I think we're talking about the boards and superintendents, because I represent a significant number of low-wealth districts. So first of all, we have to realize that all local districts can't do the same in terms of supplements, the kind of business and industry partnerships they can do. We're talking about a tale of 2 educations. those in the wealthier areas and those in the lower wealth areas. And I think we have to keep that in mind, and we have to encourage all of our boards to step up to the plate to help advocate and to the county commissioners and the local communities for what educators and teachers need and to provide the working environment for optimal performance. I want to also add that I was disappointed in the position, and I think it was a setback in the position that the superintendents and boards took in favor of eliminating career status for teachers. And I think that will be looked at as a setback in years ahead. Now, while they didn't necessarily support what we finally ended up with, they helped grease the skids for where we are, and that was a concern. So I think they need to be careful about jumping on the bandwagon, the political bandwagon for proposals that hurt the status and professional career options for teachers.
President Glazier.
I would suggest 4 points, and I think first is re-engaging both our full communities but the business community in a recognition of the importance of public education. Everyone here recognizes it, but I think we sort of lost sight of what that means. I would argue, as Diane Ravitch did brilliantly earlier, no institution has bonded our people together as one nation under one flag with a common set of values like public education. And public education in that sense is really the core of democracy, and public education doesn't mean 1,000 voucher and charter schools littering the state. Public education means a uniform system. I think that in that sense, this sort of value issue is important. Second, I think the speaker, particularly our out-of-country speaker from Finland yesterday, talked a lot about the countries that really increase prestige, create professional space. We have it in our professional offices. We don't necessarily create that in our schools, and I think we need to. Third is a creation of really true vertical and horizontal professional time. Finland gives 10 to 20 hours of professional development time to the teachers. We give 1 to 3. And I guess my fourth point is to be careful that our words as legislators and executive officials matter, and as much sometimes as our deeds. And so legislative strafing of the profession or things that we think are tangential aren't. When we talk about eliminating NCAT, when we have eliminated the teaching fellows, when we eliminated both parties' professional development funds, when we've eliminated mentoring, we send signals, and those aren't good ones. And so those at least would be 4 points that I would start with.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I think there's no way that you can show that you appreciate and want to raise the status of teachers first by you've got to pay them more, compensation. And I think that is a combination of state and local dollars. I think that we can both do that. But from my experience of being in the classroom, the thing that I think reassures a teacher that they are appreciated more than anything is by having principals and superintendents who stand behind them and support them as long as they're doing their job. And, that doesn't always happen. And I think that just having that pat on the shoulder and telling them that you're doing a good job, that means more, I think, to a teacher than anything. But again, I think that we as a state, we've got to find a way to raise the salaries. I think counties have got to find a way to chip in and raise local supplements. And I think it's just going to be a lot of teamwork and us working together.
President Horn.
Thank you. No question. We can't buy respect. But we can certainly reward performance and show our respect through pay scales and opportunities for advancement. The thing that I'm particularly supportive of and I think we need is a better way of professional development. And my experience with the teachers has been that professional development means we're going to have another class on how to fill out another form. Well, that's not professional development. An opportunity to expand one's knowledge as a professional. In my profession, when I was in the service, there were no promotions available in my career field. So we created our own opportunities to grow professionally and be recognized within our duty area. The other part that I think is critical is that the teachers need a seat at the table. They need to be involved in the decisions that they ultimately have to implement. We sit in Raleigh half the time with a sack over our head, talking to ourselves about what's the best for the kids and for the teachers. Well, the kids and the teachers go together, and we need to involve them in that decision-making process at the school level, at the district level, and at the state level. And I think that would go a long way in ensuring better decisions, everybody feeling that they have been part of the process, even when you lose. And I'm pretty good at losing, it appears, when I look at the vote count sometimes. But even at least I got a chance to have my voice heard. And that's what the teachers deserve. And frankly, we need that. We desperately need it. Talk to us more.
Let's stay on professional development. You raised that subject. Let's stay on that. Not this legislature, not this governor, but the prior governor, prior legislature, as you pointed out, eliminated most of the state funding for professional development. It was a sizable amount of money. It was, I think some of us thought, and I was there at the time, that it was perhaps not the best utilization of it, but it was pretty much eliminated. Let's talk about, picking up on Representative Horn's comments on professional development, sort of what's next? What needs to happen, again, state level, district level, school level, what role teachers need to play? You've commented several times on involved, and others have too, but what role teachers have in professional development? Representative Glazier.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with Representative Horn here. I mean, I think professional development is best decentralized. I am increasingly concerned when we pass, and again, it's not been a partisan issue, but when we pass legislation that says 1.5 credits have to be this, 3.2 credits have to be that, I mean, the professional development has to be based on the strengths and weaknesses of the students, and the strengths and weaknesses of the teachers is best decided at that school level basis, and then at the district school level. But that to create that is truly sort of the quintessential local decision. That's not to say that the state doesn't have a role, which is to fund opportunities to create best practices information, to create those opportunities. And I think we have, when we're in a position as we are with other countries, but also when you compare us to business, everyone likes to do that, to education. We probably spend well less than 0.5% of our funds on professional development. Most businesses spend 2 to 3% at a minimum. And that's simply not fair, and it's also not fair, getting back to your earlier question, about how you raise the prestige of the profession.
I just want to add that I think that we're going to be challenged, for example, when Race to the Top runs out, which has been a source for a lot of the professional development that's happened in the last several years. We're going to be challenged to step up to the plate in terms of our commitment, real commitment on professional development and putting a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, if that's what we believe we can do. We also have to look at the fact that we have basically locked in the recessionary cuts permanently into the education funding. So we'll have to increase that. Meanwhile, we have pulled, with tax reform, some $600 million out of the budget. So on the revenue side, we are challenged. And so I think it's going to be, I'm not clear where we will go, what direction we can go in. There will be new revenue, and I hope this will be a priority, but I'm concerned about whether there'll be the will to
Let's turn to the
implement
appropriation
that.
chair.
Yes. Thank you. And when we talk about professional development, I think the most important thing for us to do first is actually have a conversation with the teachers to hear, what do you need and what do you want? I don't think it's ever responsible for us at the government, whether it be the state or the federal, to just sit up here and decide, well, this is how we need to develop you professionally. As indicated before, I actually taught for 6 years, and sometimes some of the professional development was good, but there were other times where I would leave and felt like, I just did that because I had to. And I think we need to have a more in-depth conversation with teachers. What do you need? What kind of support do you need? Particularly with the young teachers who are fresh coming out of college, professional development is probably most important for them. I could remember when I first started in the classroom, I was 21 years old, just looked like I was fresh out of high school, and professional development was very important, and I probably needed more than I actually got, but again, that conversation dialogue was never there. And I think that the best thing that we can do is to start that dialogue and start the conversation and give teachers what they need and what they need to help them grow in their profession.
Representative.
Well, I need some professional development as a legislator. So I'm not going to accept.
You shouldn't have gone there.
I probably shouldn't have gone there. I'm not at all going to accept that these budget cuts are locked in. We've just come through, and we're actually not yet out of the worst and longest recession, certainly in my lifetime, although I came into the lifetime just as the Depression was ending, so maybe not. But I believe that we can and that we will, as well as we must, fund a program, a system for real professional development, to raise each one of us, raise the opportunity as well as our abilities for each and every one of us. I think we can do that. I think we recognize it. I think there are lots of resources that we can bring to the table we haven't even investigated. And I know that some years ago I put on a professional development program for a couple of LEAs over in the Charlotte area. And it was a pleasure to hear from the teachers that they really spent a day learning new things, not how to fill out another form. So we need to define what is professional development for each one that's going to work for them. But I'm committed to funding it, and I believe that we can and we will do that.
Well, follow-up anecdote.
One more, and then we'll change stuff.
Just to follow up anecdote to agree with Representative Horn and Representative Holloway, but when I became school board chair many years ago, you realize pretty quickly what you don't know, which is most everything. And I enjoyed teaching faculty, but I had never taught high school or middle school or elementary. And so I asked my superintendent, who was Bill Harrison at the time, if he would give me a full day of classes at Terry Sanford High School. And I did that, which may have been the best day I ever spent as a school board member. And so we were on 7-period day, and I taught 6 of the 7 periods. By the 5th period, I didn't remember what I taught in the first, and by the 6th period, I didn't care. I'd lost my voice, and I'm a lawyer, and I'd lost my voice by the end of the day. And at 4:30, when I finished and wrote my notes for my teacher the next day, I turned to Al Miller, who was my principal, and said, and if you told me at 4:30 we were going to have staff development, I'd have strangled you. So timing and creating the time and the space for it, and that means money and resources, is really a big issue, because good staff development is not at 4 in the afternoon.
In terms of teacher involvement, which I think is important, I was talking to Superintendent Atkinson, and she indicated that she has a teachers advisory committee, and somebody reminded me we have a teacher representative on the state board. That's at the state level. I think it is important to push your legislators to have forums, roundtables with you at in your local districts, and organize to give feedback to your principals and superintendents at the local level on what it is you need. There's some advantage when change is happening like this and transition, while it's chaotic and some of it may not be what we want. There are maybe some opportunities to create some things that you wouldn't have been able to create had business been as usual. So let's take advantage of that and get involved at the local level and make a difference.
Thank you for those comments. Let's change a little bit and talk about a couple of subjects that have been touched on a lot in the last day and a half, and that's testing and performance pay. And the two tied together or not. And I see Senator Tillman is eager to jump on that one.
Well, maybe not eager, because I'm not a fan of all the testing we're doing in the public schools. We are killing our students. We are sapping the creativity out of a teacher by having all of these tests that all you're doing is sitting around teaching a narrow body of knowledge that's on that test, and then you think they really learned something. Well, believe me, that's not teaching and that's not learning. Yes, the public wants accountability, and we're going to be demanding accountability, but there's some simple tests that can be used nationwide that already have national validation. To name a few, we've got the NAEP, we've got the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, we've got ACT, we've got SAT. They're already validated. We don't have to come and draw some tests out of the air to prove that we're doing something. We've got tests, and they're not the most expensive things in the world. We got to narrow this testing window down from 15 or 20 days to 2 or 3 or 4 days of testing. I will not leave this legislature a happy man until we've done something about that. We are going to be asking for more accountability, and you as teachers have got to say, we are accountable. We just want a fair system of determining our accountability. We can live with that. You can live with that. And that's the day that we're in. So we're going to have that. But we don't have to kill our students. My little third graders are grandkids. They're coming home and saying, Grandpa, we are not going to pass the third grade. I said, God, you were reading in kindergarten, honey. You know what you're reading, you will. But the fear of all of these things, you have got them in a panic stage, and there's no need for that. You can informally do a lot of testing, teachers, throughout the year and check these things off and have it. And you can know what their reading level is without some end-of-the-year big crush and crunch on these tests where they panic. We can do that in a different way, folks. In many of these things, we're overcomplicating them and having a big testing brouhaha that panics everybody. I've been around schools for 40-some years, and if you walk through on testing days, the kids are all in a nervous wreck. Teachers are too, and they're in a panic. So I believe that's got to change, and I'm all for that, and I will still be trying. Holloway, you tried to eliminate tests and did, some of the high school end, of course. But when you get there, we've turned around and put Race to the Top, which brings in all this other set of tests. Every time we can eliminate 4 or 5, we gain 6. I'm tired of that. I know there is a way of figuring out how to do this, and I'm going to try to work to do it. That's my sermon for today. It's worth exactly what you paid for it.
Yeah. Pleasure.
And I think that and I agree with much of what Senator Tillman said, but I want to get to the other part of the question on the performance pay. Most everybody here, I think, was here to hear Daniel Pink yesterday, and I will, mea culpa. When I was a school board member, I thought that a panacea, as sort of a person who was a managing partner in his business, that performance pay was just something that you did, that it made things better, that it was the right way to move, to motivate. And I had that belief when I first came to the legislature. And then I went about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when the book Drive came out by Daniel Pink to a lecture at the University of Virginia that was put on for state legislators, where a bunch of us got to talk. We also had to read a bunch of books, and that was one of them. And it totally reversed my philosophy. I can't think of a better, more eloquent or cogent argument against the concept of merit pay in teaching than what Daniel Pink gave yesterday, and he is right. The concept is based on a false set of assumptions. The first being that teachers somehow aren't motivated unless they're going to be paid more. I'm going to be a 10% better teacher if I get 10% more money, which is a false assumption. And second, that they're motivated by money to begin with other than the base salary, and then the whole merit pay is based on we're going to motivate you with something that doesn't motivate you. I think he's absolutely right about that, and the idea of cognitive work. And more importantly, the scientific data shows that in almost every place it's been tried, it has not produced the results intended. That is a different issue than differentiated pay, which is a good concept in terms of trying to staff at-risk schools, shortage positions, but that's a whole different matter. But I am not a proponent of merit pay and do not believe that we ought to be investing the time. And if you haven't read Daniel Pink's book, Drive, you need to.
Senator Tillman, I agree with you. I think we have too many tests, and you were exactly right. We passed legislation a few years ago that did away with all the state-mandated EOCs, leaving us just with what the federal government required. And then we've seen these MSLs and other things pop up. So I think we have far too many tests, and I'm afraid that we measure our teachers and their performance by these tests way too much. Representative Glazier, I agree with some of the things that you say about performance pay. It's very easy to make a speech about it, and it sounds great, but the problem is when you start trying to create a formula that measures teachers fairly, and I've never seen one yet. And there's lots of things that you've got to take in consideration. The child's home life, you can't force them to go home and study. And again, it gets back to the testing. I don't know if that itself is a good way to measure teachers, and I don't know how you can create a formula to determine if you get that 10% extra pay. Plus, I think we've got to be careful not to get the cart before the horse. If we're interested in national pay, national starting pay, then we need to just work on getting our salaries up closer to the national average. And if we want to look at performance pay, I think it needs to be a much long-term goal, not a short-term goal. And I think, again, we need to just focus on getting compensation up. In general, I think that will build more morale. And again, I agree with Representative Horn. I don't think you can buy morale, but I think that we're also kidding ourselves if we think that we're not going to show teachers that we appreciate them more by paying them more.
My clock says we're 7 minutes over. Anita, you don't have the hook out here on stage yet, but I see you're coming this way, so I know what that means. Thank you, panelists, first of all, for your service to this state. Having been there, ladies and gentlemen, it's long hours. If there's one group of people in the state paid a lot less than teachers, it's legislators. It's about a third of what a teacher is paid. And they put in tremendous amounts of time and energy and care a lot about this state, regardless of party. And they come and they work hard together. It was a delight to serve with them and an honor. And I look forward to their leadership as these issues go forward. And let me say this, as a legislator, and I think this is true for each panelist here, I like nothing better than to be invited into a school to come visit. Those are my favorite days to go spend some time in the classroom. I couldn't do a whole day. I couldn't make it. But observing and talking to students, talking to teachers, invite your legislators back home. There are 97 counties represented in this room, if they haven't left yet. Invite your legislators to come see you. I bet you they'll come and spend some quality time with you and want to engage you one-on-one, because I can tell you to a person, an 120-member General Assembly, they care about education, they care about the state. They wouldn't take time away from their lives and their professions to serve the state as they do, and I think you'll find them to be open and responsive to your needs. Let's pause and give the panelists a round of applause for being here with us today.